They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from family. I'm Emily Caldwell, and the person who betrayed me wasn't a stranger, a business partner, or a rival. It was my own cousin. The man who should have been my ally turned me into his enemy. And what he stole from me wasn't just money, it was my name, my reputation, and the legacy I thought we'd protect together. I never wanted the spotlight. I was the quiet one, the one who made sure the numbers added up, the suppliers were paid, and the legacy of Caldwell and Sons stayed intact. My Uncle Charles was the face of the company, shaking hands at every gala. My cousin Nathan? He was the loud voice in every room, always pitching some visionary idea. But me? I was the backbone, the one who actually kept the machine running. When Uncle Charles passed away, the will split the estate. Nathan got 60%. I got 40%. Did it sting? Of course. I had given my life to that company, and a part of me wanted the recognition. But I didn't fight it. I believed in the business more than the numbers. I thought Nathan did too. I thought we would honor Uncle Charles together. But Nathan saw things differently. To him, that inheritance wasn't just money, it was a throne. And me? I wasn't family anymore. I was competition. 3 months after the funeral, things started to unravel. A supplier called, furious about unpaid invoices. A client threatened legal action. I tried logging into our accounting system, access denied. And then came the bombshell. Nathan accused me of embezzling nearly $2 million. I can still remember the room when he said it. The board members looked at me like I was poison. My stomach dropped. My ears rang. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the words got stuck in my throat. Nathan had already prepared his speech, the wounded heir stepping up to protect the family legacy. I'm heartbroken, he told the press, his voice dripping with false sincerity. But I have to protect the company. Just like that, I was suspended. My name was splashed across industry blogs. Friends stopped returning my calls. Clients I had nurtured for years wouldn't look me in the eye. Overnight, I became the thief who stole from her own family. And the headlines were merciless. Heiress accused of corporate theft. Caldwell cousin betrays bloodline. Every article painted Nathan as the loyal defender and me as the greedy traitor. Strangers whispered about me at coffee shops. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without feeling the sting of eyes on my back. Have you ever been so blindsided by betrayal that you start questioning your own memory? I sat awake for nights, staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision I'd made, every transaction I'd approved. Was I losing my mind? Had I missed something so big? But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew I'd been framed. So I disappeared. I packed up and moved into a small cabin in Vermont. No press. No board meetings. No Nathan. Just silence. The first few weeks were brutal. I barely ate. I barely slept. The world felt like it had ended, and in a way, it had. My career, my reputation, my life's work, all gone in the blink of an eye. Shame clung to me like smoke. Every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see Emily, the woman who had kept Caldwell and Sons running. I saw a failure. But silence has a way of breaking you open. Slowly, painfully, it forced me to listen to myself again. The anger I had buried under grief started to burn hotter. I realized I wasn't just broken. I was still alive. And if I was alive, I could fight. So I began. I started reconstructing the company's finances from memory. I scribbled notes on scraps of paper. I dug through old emails, supplier records, even handwritten invoices I had stored in boxes. The walls of that little cabin became covered in charts, timelines, connections. I turned my exile into a war room. I reached out quietly to former employees, people I trusted. Some ignored me. Others hung up. But then one young intern finally confessed. Nathan had asked him to clean up the books, right before the audit that buried me. He looked terrified even saying it, but in his trembling voice, I heard something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. That was the crack I needed. And then came Marla. She was a retired IRS investigator, a forensic accountant with a reputation for sniffing out fraud others missed. She didn't flinch when I told her the story. She just leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "Let's catch him." Together, we dug deep. It was like unraveling a spider's web. Doctored invoices that didn't match supplier logs. Shell companies with no employees, only Nathan's fingerprints. Offshore transfers that disappeared into accounts hidden overseas. Each breadcrumb led back to Nathan. And with each discovery, my anger hardened into something else. Determination. But I knew better than to rush. Nathan was powerful. He had the press on his side, the board eating from his hand. If I struck too early, he'd bury me again. I needed more than proof. I needed a stage. So I waited. For an entire year, I built my case. Every sleepless night, every whisper of doubt, I reminded myself, this isn't about revenge. This is about truth. About taking back the name he tried to destroy. When I finally filed the civil suit against Nathan and Caldwell and Sons for defamation, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty, the media went into a frenzy. The return of the fallen heiress. That's what the headlines called me. For once, the spotlight wasn't something I feared. It was my weapon. Nathan mocked me publicly. A desperate stunt, he sneered on his podcast. Emily's just bitter. He smirked in every photo, convinced he'd already won. In court, his lawyers came armed with doctored spreadsheets and forged emails. They thought I'd collapse under the weight of their lies. But I came prepared. I had time-stamped backups, supplier testimonies, and Marla's meticulous forensic report. And then came the twist. Marla traced a $500,000 transfer from Caldwell and Sons to a Cayman Islands account, registered under Nathan's own name. The judge froze. The courtroom went silent. And Nathan's face went pale. But I wasn't done. I pulled out one final piece of evidence, a video. Nathan, drunk at a private party, bragging to his friends, Emily's too naive to see it coming. I rewrote the books myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Reporters scribbled furiously. The board members shifted uncomfortably, realizing the golden boy wasn't so golden after all. And Nathan? He couldn't look at me. For the first time in his life, he had no words. The verdict was swift. The judge ruled in my favor. Nathan lost his inheritance, was fined for fraud, and banned from serving as an executive for 10 years. Caldwell and Sons was placed under independent management. They offered me a consulting role. I declined. I didn't want the company back. I wanted my dignity back. My name. My truth. Nathan's fall was merciless. His assets were seized. His podcast about corporate resilience collapsed after sponsors pulled out. The same industry blogs that once smeared me now mocked him. People whispered about his arrogance, his lies. He became the punchline to jokes at the very conferences where he once strutted. Meanwhile, I built something new. I started a nonprofit helping women fight corporate abuse and fraud. I wanted others to have the tools I wished I'd had in those lonely, hopeless months when I thought I was ruined. Years later, I stood on stage at a business ethics conference. My story had become a Harvard case study. I ended my speech with these words: "Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration." I didn't burn the house down. I rebuilt the foundation. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. For the first time in years, I felt whole again. And somewhere, in a dim apartment Nathan could barely afford, he watched the live stream alone, bitter and forgotten. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It can break you, or it can forge you. Tell me, what would you have done if your own family had tried to erase you?